Balake. Where is Balake at?
My name's Blake.
Do you want to go to war, Balake? I'm for real. Ron.
Ron is right here, everyone. I'm joined today by the one, the only, your attorney friend, or should I say your lawyer friend, Zach Morgan. How's it going, Zach? All right, he's doing sign language today. Guys, if you're not already subscribed
thanks for having me back.
My pleasure as always. If you're not already subscribed to Zach's YouTube channel, your lawyer friend Zach, jump over there and show him some YouTube love. He uploads fantastic content. Hey, I got to tell you, the media is all over the place on reporting this sentence. Uh-oh, your picture's all pixelated. Oh, it's okay. It's fine. We might be having some internet speed issue, guys, but we're just going to roll with it. So Zach, you and I have actually spoken about this in previous videos about what 30 to life means. I feel like it needs to have another conversation. Some people have misreported that he has been given a sentence of 30 years in prison, and that's not what his sentence is. I have reported that his sentence was life in prison. I'm sure there are some people who would say that's not what his sentence is. Tell us the difference between, of course, there's life in prison without the possibility of parole. Then there's, right? Like, I mean, that's a thing, life without the possibility of parole. And so then I guess you have life with the possibility of parole. I've always thought of this sentence as life with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Is there something about what this really means that's different than how I've characterized it? Uh-oh. Zach, are we having a connection problem?
Right. And that's exactly what it's... Well,
okay, go ahead. We must just have a lag, but go ahead. I'm just going to let you speak.
No, it gets hung up. The media, for everything that they do, right? If they're not a lawyer, they don't really understand. Can you hear me?
Yeah, but we seriously must have like a 25-second lag. So Zach, I'm just going to be quiet and let you speak. What does 30 to life actually mean? Is it different than life in prison?
There are multiple types of life. Life without the possibility of parole, or what we call LWOP, LWOP, is exactly what it sounds like. You go into prison, you do not come out unless you are in a body bag. Whether it's because you were unalived by somebody in prison, or you just simply lived the rest of your natural life and died of some age-related disease, the only way out is in a body bag. Then there is life with life. Okay. No, that's simply another way of describing it. Life, a life sentence is exactly what Danny Masterson was given, and under California law, he is not eligible to petition for parole consideration until he has been incarcerated 30 years. You've said before that Charles Manson was denied parole like 11 times or more, which is accurate. Just because somebody is parole eligible doesn't mean they automatically get out. That doesn't mean inherently the door to the prison will be opened and people will walk out. All that means is he must serve a minimum of 30 years of a life sentence. That is all it means. That's literally all it means, is that in order to be eligible for consideration for parole, he has to sit behind bars for 30 years. Now, there is the possibility that this is what's called an 85% crime. You must serve 85% of the minimum part of your sentence before you're eligible, which mathematically would be 25 and a half years instead of 30. But at the age of 47, he's looking in his 70s before he's eligible anyway. So it's not nearly as complicated. Most of the media outlets are getting it wrong. They're calling it a 30-year sentence. It's not. It is a life sentence with a mandatory minimum of 30 years, possibly 25 and a half if he gets 15%. If he's able to be eligible 15% early. That's all it means.
Okay. I am curious if you have any opinion as to why the judge wouldn't read this. Why do they use this language 30 to life instead of you're being sentenced to life in prison, you will be eligible for parole after 30 years. You would not eligible for parole prior to 30 years. Is there some legal nuance why the sentence has been described by the judge the way that it has been? Oh my God, our lag is huge. Well, this is not going to work.
No, I know it is. I realized that earlier. There's no material difference. It's a stylistic thing more than anything. It's designed to provide clarity, and where people run into trouble, and lawyers are probably the worst about this. We just overthink it. Well, 30 plus this, and we got life, but is it life because it's 30? We overthink it as lawyers. It's really just it's just a math problem. He has to sit in prison for 30 years. If he manages to survive that long, he can then petition for parole or 25 and a half years. I know it's a 4.5 year difference, but it is what it is.
Okay. All right. I'm guessing that it takes 25 seconds for me to realize that you finished, and then, oh no, he backed out. Don't back out, Zach. He's actually still in the studio. He just took himself off screen. So I wonder if he's resetting something. I hope he doesn't think that I did it. Oh, okay. He's out completely. I think he's going to reset his router and then come back in. Guys, hit me with some questions. You guys know I can't handle dead air. I'll look at some super chats here. Zach will be back very shortly, I'm sure. Tintin 70130. Germany loves you. Thank you for everything you do. Rock Aaron. Dankeschön. Ist ein wunderschöner Tag heute. And I forget how to say the other thing, but all right. Thank you so much, Tintin. Joshua Cox, Zach, why were the Jane Does not named during the trial? Are court cases public record? Will their names be on the record? I can answer this question, Josh. Because of the nature of the crimes, I believe Marcy's law is in part responsible for certain measures that are there to protect the identity and the safety of victims of sexual assault who come forward, particularly violent sexual assault, who come forward. Protections baked into laws such as Marcy's law are there to make it harder to harass and intimidate victims of such crimes, and to make it perhaps easier to come forward without having to clear this hurdle of your name is going to be, nobody wants to, first of all, many victims of crimes like this don't want to be known by the world as victims of crimes like this. They just want to be who they are, not always known as, oh, you're the, victim of Danny Masterson. You know what I mean? And so calling them Jane Does is for their safety and their protection. It is also up to them to let the world know who they are if they want to. So that's why Jane Doe 3 was referred to as Jane Doe 3, even though she had already publicly, as Chrissy Carnell Bixler, spoken out on TV about having been raped by Danny Masterson. It really is just a matter of good form, proper court etiquette. So I can tell you that during the trial, every time that one of the prosecutors or one of the defense attorneys accidentally said Chrissy or Nisha or Jen, the judge stopped the proceedings, told the court reporter to stricken the name from the record. And that was for the sake of the record. So anyone who gets a transcript of the court proceedings will get a copy of the transcript that does not have the Jane Doe's name in them, because that's just the proper form for the court proceedings. That being said, Jane Doe 2 identified herself publicly. Jane Doe 3 has identified herself publicly. As of now, Jane Doe 1 has identified publicly as Jen. So that's an answer to that question. See, even a non-lawyer can answer that question. Thank you, Josh. Pat Shore, off topic, we'll probably get some mad comments, but here it goes. Do you think Scientology wrote the letters from Mila and Ashton? If not, they have sickened me, and I am sad because I've always thought of them as a decent family. I do not think Scientology wrote those letters. If Scientology did write those letters, that would be amazing, because I guarantee you Mila and Ashton would sue the shit out of Scientology for having done that. But I don't believe for one second that those letters were written by anyone other than Mila and Ashton. That's my personal opinion on that. KC Cat, so that 70s show was prophetic. Yes, in more ways than one. Spike Z, the sentence is related to the one strike law. Well, yes, my understanding is that's why the sentence is a life sentence. Anyway, yeah, that's fine. Let's see. How's that connection?
It's better on my end.
Okay, good. Well, if we have a lag, it's only a few seconds long, so that works for me.
Perfect.
I'm trying to remember if the last thing that was said was a question from me or an answer from you. And
ask it again. We'll answer it again.
I'm not even going to be able to remember what I was saying. Hold on. Let me think. You answered something about we make it very complicated. We overthink things. This is what I wanted to ask you, even if it's not what I was in the middle of saying. So Tommy Scovel, Captain Tommy Scovel of the Lifeboat, told me, he said, here's the other thing that people need to consider. Every time you are involved in an altercation or a fight or anything in prison, even if you did not start it, you're getting time added to your sentence. And he said, anytime someone, Tommy has explained that Danny's on NC status. He's got nothing coming. And everyone in that place has a green light to go after Danny. He's not protected by any groups or anything because of his bad paperwork. And he said, look, anytime someone wants to go after Danny, he's going to have time added to his sentence because it will be considered that he was involved in an altercation. Do you have any experience with this? Either representing client, I know not personally, but representing clients, or do you have any firsthand knowledge about things like that? Or secondhand, I guess.
Sure. So there's a really great documentary that explains this. Actually, for years, prisons were run by the convict code. And then gangs, as a result, primarily of the drug war of the 1980s, gangs became prominent in prison. And they were, of course, there before that. But now, the one thing that unifies gangs are people who have been convicted of the type of crimes that Danny Masterson has been convicted of. And so everybody gets a green light. And so for Danny, it's just going to be a survival contest. Can I survive long enough such that at some point, theoretically, if he is in a protected unit long enough, the people who know about his sentence could theoretically turn over and leave the institution. But you're on the sensitive needs facility for a reason. You're not just there because it's a Tuesday. You're there because it's gender identity, it's sexual identity, sexual orientation, or the type of crime or mental health condition or the type of crime of which you were convicted. So, and the prison system, for as large as it is, it's a very small community, and word gets passed rapidly from facility to facility, especially as inmates get reassigned to different facilities. They take that knowledge of institution A to institution B, and they educate institution B. So, you're never completely safe. And so the one thing that unifies gangbangers across different demographics, whether it's racial or ethnic or whatever, the one thing that unites them across demographics are people who have been convicted of the type of crimes of which Danny Masterson now finds himself a member of. It's an elite club nobody wants to join, but as I understand, they have matching jackets. So,
okay, I have another question.
Sure.
Is the rule about serving at least 85% of your sentence, is that in any way connected to the concept of time off for good behavior?
No. No, time off for good behavior is something completely different, because even states that don't have 85% crimes still recognize time off for good behavior. States that do have 85% crimes recognize time off for good behavior. The 85% crime threshold just simply identifies when a person is eligible for parole.
Hmm.
And so a state that doesn't have an 85% crime, or like, and not every crime is an 85% crime. I could be convicted of a non-85% crime, get 30 years, and I could theoretically be eligible for parole as early as 5 or 6 or 7 years into my sentence. So the only thing the 85% does is it identifies the earliest threshold at which an application to the Pardon and Parole Board may be made.
Okay. Would I be correct in saying that because his sentence is technically a life sentence, that he doesn't get time off for good behavior?
That's, yeah, as I understand the California law, that's correct. Time off for good behavior generally applies to those individuals who have a definite sentence, a definite time of their sentence. You are sentenced not to 30 to life. You are sentenced to 30 years. The longest you would ever serve is 30 years, unless you pick up more time for being involved in violent activities and running drugs and smuggling contraband and running, gangbanging and whatever. If you don't pick up additional time, the minimum, your sentence is over in 30 years, but you might get credit because you behaved and you were employed in the prison, you cooked in the prison kitchen, and you went to rehab and you went to these group meetings and whatever. So you get all these additional credits that are stacked on. And then you can also, sometimes you'll also hear like credit for time served. You did 100 days in jail, so you get 100 days towards your sentence because you've been behind bars, incarcerated for so many days. You get credit, so that's credit for time served. Now, Danny Masterson is entitled to credit for time served because incarceration is incarceration, whether it's at the LA Men's Central Jail or San Quentin or Pelican Bay, it doesn't matter. He does get credit theoretically for the 100 days, although on a 30-year sentence, that's a nominal amount. But if somebody's doing 5 or 6 or 7 years, that's significant. You pick up, a year, 8 or 9 or 10 months or a year or more in good behavior credits, plus that 100 or 150 days, suddenly you're looking at, 5.5 instead of 7 or 8 years.
Right. It's interesting. I remember the judge at the end, at the sentencing did say he is going to be served, given credit for 100 days served in county jail. She said he's going to be given a 15% credit for good behavior. So 115 days credit for the time he served in county jail. But again, help me understand this correctly, because I'm still sitting over here thinking he's got a life sentence. Good behavior is not relevant. Let's just say he serves 85% of his sentence. That's 25 and a half years. Does that 25 and a half years get less and less and less if he demonstrates good behavior?
Oh, it certainly can. The more significant part of it is those would all be beneficial factors that the parole committee would consider. What have you done since you were incarcerated? Have you kept to yourself? Were you involved in violence? Were you involved in a program? Whatever the thing, and so that would all go towards, even if he were to get credit theoretically to shorten the sentence, those are also factors that he would try to articulate to the parole committee to strengthen his case for being released from incarceration.
Okay, good. Next, big picture philosophical legal question. What in the world is the point of calling it a life sentence if you are eligible for parole after 30 years?
Well, I guess my counterpoint would be, why did we call Charles Manson's a life sentence when he was eligible for parole 15 times?
No, that's what I mean.
He still served the rest of his life in prison.
I see.
It's just illegal. It's essentially a legal term, and it essentially guides the court. It also is in place to help prison officials figure out the best facility to incarcerate people with life sentences. If I'm life without parole, they could put me in a supermax or a high security facility, even if I'm not a high security inmate. But the lockdown procedures are such that it's often dehumanizing. If I'm serving life without parole, but there's no indications of me being violent, or you can also use it as a reward. Hey, you're life without parole, but we're going to send you to a lower security facility where you get to be in open population. You get to go on the yard for longer periods of time. There's more employment opportunities. There's more program opportunities. But it really helps the prison staff know, is this somebody we're going to be tracking for the next 70 years because you got an LWOP at 25? Or is this somebody that we only have to keep track of for 6 or 7 years? So they use that sort of to determine the level of facility, where within the facility somebody needs to be assigned, like he's in the medical unit or was in the medical unit, the LA Men's Jail, and some of those kind of things. So it also helps the prison staff figure out the best way to rate this inmate's risk category, the best way to book and store this inmate, the best facility to put this inmate in. Because ultimately, the prison does have a responsibility to take all reasonable steps to ensure the safety and well-being of the inmates. Even though they're there for having done really terrible acts, they're still humans and they're still entitled to a minimum level of dignity just by virtue of existing.
Right. That makes sense. There was one other. By the time the sentencing was over, there was no information provided, not enough information provided to know what level of facility Danny Masterson is going to be going to. Do you know at what point anyone's going to be able to figure that out or find that out?
Yeah, so eventually you can just look him up on the Department of Corrections website. Like I can look up anybody incarcerated. It'll have their photo. The most recent photo will have their inmate number, their DOC number, and then it'll have like the facility, their crime, all this kind of stuff. The facility in which they're stored, that's all public record now. In most states, and I believe California to be the same, he will spend some time in the county jail until such time as the state is prepared to receive him into the Department of Corrections. Most states, I believe including California, have a central processing facility. Like before you go to San Quentin, you go to whatever the intake facility is in Oklahoma. It's in Lexington, Oklahoma. That's the prisoner intake facility. Everybody, even if they have a death sentence and they're headed to McAllister to the state penitentiary to await their call to the death chamber, they spend time at Lexington where they're evaluated by psych, they're evaluated by social work, they're evaluated by medical and health. They undergo inmate risk assessments. They identify, do you have any tattoos? Are you gang related, right? If you're part of a specific gang, we don't want to send you to a facility that has a high population of your enemies or your combatants, because we don't want to unnecessarily create increase violence in an already violent setting. So he will be processed in through one of those intake facilities. Sometimes it takes days, sometimes it takes weeks, sometimes it takes months. Most of those intake facilities are relatively low level, but you don't generally get a cellie or whatever. You're sort of by yourself for security reasons. But there are inmates who just live full time at these intake facilities and provide administrative support and administrative services as part of their prison employment. So he'll go through an intake facility where he will have a variety of tests and evaluations and whatnot done. And then somebody on the warden level, the general staff level, will evaluate him and make a determination as to the appropriate level of facility and what type of treatment or other care he might need by virtue of his conviction or medical condition or whatever. And then they look at all the facilities that satisfy that requirement, and they make a choice based on demographic, population, how many people are there, is it at capacity, is it less than capacity, CO to inmate ratio, staff to inmate ratio. There's a lot of factors that they consider once they identify the type of facility he needs, and then from there he'll be assigned to his facility and transported to that facility for long-term incarceration.
Very interesting. Those might have been all my specific questions. We do have a bunch of super chats here. Was there anything else that you already had in the back of your mind you wanted to comment on regarding this?
No, I don't think so. Those questions were fairly open-ended, and as a lawyer, I prefer those because I can sort of explain the answers. But I don't ask them to witnesses. I don't want witnesses explaining. I want them to answer my questions.
All right. Joshua Cox asks, Zach, why does the Fifth Amendment does not to DM?
I think they're asking why the Fifth Amendment doesn't apply.
Okay. In future trials, that is future rape trials or civil cases. You two are great. Keep up the great work. What does this question mean to you?
So great question, Josh. Let's start. So you got a couple of issues here. So the Fifth Amendment does apply for any crime for which he has not already been tried. So if, and so a hung jury does not count as a trial. So theoretically, if the state decided to prosecute him for the same crime for the third time against his, former, now ex, longtime girlfriend, he could assert the Fifth Amendment privilege in the civil trials as it pertains to that, but he cannot assert, really in any trial, any trial setting, he can no longer assert the Fifth Amendment privilege as it pertains to the Jane Does 1 and 2, because he's been convicted. Just like it wouldn't protect him if he was found not guilty either. That's what happened in the O.J. Simpson case. He didn't have to testify in the criminal trial. He was found not guilty, which simply means, he doesn't mean he didn't do it. It simply means not proven. Then the civil trial comes where he's sued by the Ron Goldman and Nicole Brown Smith families. And they find him civilly liable and hit him with $30 million because he was forced to testify. Because even if he says, you're darn right, I did it and I would do it again, they can't retry him. A jury already found him not guilty, so he's protected by jeopardy protection.
Right. So in the civil lawsuit that the Jane Does and some others have going against Danny right now, he cannot is it claim or plead the fifth? Plead the fifth. I plead the fifth. Whatever.
Either way, you can claim,
protection.
you can assert, you can plead. Yeah,
Assert. Okay.
you can use any word, but basically, it's availing yourself of the protection.
So he cannot hide behind the Fifth Amendment in any testimony about in the civil suit if it relates to Jane Doe 1 and 2.
Correct. In fact, he likely will be deposed. He can't say, no, I'm not going to show for the deposition because he's incarcerated. So they will make sure he's where he's supposed to be when he's supposed to be there. Sometimes it depends sort of on the state. Sometimes they let them out of prison to go to the conference room or the lawyer's office wherever the deposition is occurring. I fully suspect they will actually go to the prison and do the deposition at a meeting room or a conference room in the prison. Because of his celebrity and because of the nature of his crime, there's probably going to be some green lights for him out on the outside that if he does ever just travel for, for whatever reason, and he's not going into the courthouse, then, he's probably greenlit at this point. If not, it's probably coming, but, and so they will probably go to the prison, but he will absolutely give a deposition. He can't hide from it. Now, he can assert the fifth as it pertains to Jane Doe 3 and any other possible victims. Several have come forward, including one from Canada, Jane Doe 4, and some others have all come forward as well. He can certainly assert the fifth as it pertains to them, but not as it pertains to Jane Doe 1 and 2. He has to answer the questions.
That makes sense. Chris Curtin, welcome home. Great job in LA. Hang out soon. Yes, Chris, let's hang out soon. Betsy Sue, make fireworks and hearts during lag times. Okay, we know how to do the fireworks. Jankwe. Come on now. There we go. Okay. Have you tried doing this on any of your live streams, Zach?
I tried it once. Somebody mentioned that you had done it, and it didn't work out for me. But I may not have held it long enough. And I said, I'll watch Aaron do it a few times, and then I'll try to learn.
Apparently, this is supposed to work. Apparently, it only works on the end of the person hosting it. And then, of course, there's the two peace signs. Or not. One peace sign.
There's some weird coder who came up with this who had way too much time on their hands.
Two peace signs, confetti.
There it is.
There we go, guys. I think it's great.
This is like this is ordering off the hidden menu.
Somebody put in the live chat like the full menu of gestures that get recognized. Hey, whoever put that in the live chat before, go ahead and put it in there again, and I'll try to keep an eye out for it. Okay, so I think we already answered this question, right? How does he qualify to get the 15% off? Now, again, this is different. This is good. Good behavior is one thing. Yeah. What's with the 85%? What is that about? Like, it comes back to the other question of like, why give someone a sentence if all they have to serve is 85% of it? It doesn't. I can't think with it. There's got to be some legal rationale.
As I understand it, it dates back to when Rudy Giuliani was chasing the mobsters out of New York in the 80s. The Fed started this, and then this 85% stuff as part of the Bail Reform Act and the Sentencing Reform Act, because people were given a 60-year sentence for hijacking commercial trucks, and then they were serving 2 or 3 years and getting out on good behavior, going back to the streets and gangbanging and doing their bad things again. And so they started setting these minimum thresholds that says, basically you're not eligible because if you're a mobster and you're living the high life on the street, then you can suffer through 2 years in the can and then go back to living the high life on the street. We're not deterring. The purpose of incarceration is to deter bad behavior by those who are considering doing it in the future, as well as to punish those who've done it in the past. If I've got a big house and a housekeeping staff and I have access to illegal cash that I can buy my way through life, on the street, spending 2 years is worth it if I get to go back to that lifestyle. So now these guys were getting hit with 100-year sentences, and you had to serve 85% of 100 years. You were never getting out. And so it was designed to. I
get the 100-year sentence. I just don't get the asterisk of, by the way, you only have to serve 85%. Is there some under?
Yeah. So theoretically, if I gave you a 100-year sentence, and you could theoretically 6 days in apply for parole, you could just do it over and over and over again. And if you're charismatic and you behave yourself and you do all the right things in prison, you could get out quickly. Not having learned your lesson, but just being a master manipulator. A lot of criminals are master manipulators. They're very charismatic. They're very streetwise. They know how to sort of get what they want. That's how they've gotten through life to that point. And a minimum mandatory by making it 85% crime says, I don't care how pretty your smile is. I don't care how much the wardens like you. I don't care how much the COs like you, how well you get along with your therapist. We need you to sit and think and ponder and realize the wrongfulness of your conduct. And the only way to force you to do that is to give you a date at which you don't even qualify to look at the door to get out.
I get it. I just got it a little bit for the first time. Okay. I'll think on it a little bit longer, but that clicked. Well, because they have to show some compassion, but they're setting a bottom limit to that compassion. And that 85% is sort of their compassion.
Exactly. Because, and the other thing it does, it creates consistency across the pardon and parole, across the justice system as well. A judge gives 100 years, a different judge gives 30 years. If everybody knows it's an 85% crime, then theoretically it should result in more consistent application of the sentencing guidelines.
That makes sense.
There's no guarantee, but at least that's the goal. There's no guarantees.
All right. Sense of style. What was there are problems with statute of limitations during the Danny Masterson trial? So you mind if I jump in on this just for a quick one?
Go for it. You got it.
So questions about the statute of limitations were resolved before charges were brought. If these cases were just individual cases not being tried as a group, they would have each individually been past the statute of limitations. Because there was multiple cases, the nature of California's one strike law was such that because the cases together carried a possible life sentence, the statute of limitations didn't apply. And that's actually why he had to be charged with multiple counts in order for the case to move forward, the trial to move forward, and not individual counts. But Zach, they haven't published the full transcript of the hearing yet, but what did you think about the fact that the new attorney made the motion that this whole trial was in error and it was beyond the statute of limitations and the entire trial and verdict should just be thrown out?
So it's double fold. One, the lawyer is, if they had not read the entire case file, shame on them. That's borderline malpractice. But two, they're under orders and instruction from Danny. Do anything you can to get them to open the door. I don't want to be here. I've had to file motions that I didn't love filing because my client asked me to, and there was no valid reason for me not to. And ultimately, the lawyer's job is to find a way to legally and lawfully try and secure whatever outcome the client wants. And if I say, listen, this is going to cost you $1,500 between legal fees, filing fees, the hearing, it's going to cost you $1,500, and we're going to get our butt whooped. And the client says, I got $1,500 burning a hole in my pocket. Do it. Okay, fine. But I would tell them ahead of time, listen, we're going to go and get our teeth kicked in. We're getting ready to go 5 rounds with 90s Mike Tyson, not 2000s Mike Tyson. As long as you know that. So when we walk out of the courtroom with a bloody face, you can't say, oh, I didn't know. As long as you're aware of that, I'll go in and get my face beat in. That's what you're paying me for. So they had to make the motion, but it's a little bit frustrating if I'm the judge to go, listen, I've already addressed this. We've been here. We've done that. We've had the dog and pony show. Go to work. But at the same time, if the client asks you to do it and it's not unethical and you don't have a valid legal reason not to, you have a legal obligation, ethical obligation to try and execute the wishes of the client.
That makes sense. Miss Kim says, love all the coverage, especially reading the letters. 2 more celebrities I can't watch. Mila and Ashton had to know something. Hollywood is a snake pit. Yes, I'm so glad that the letters were made public so quickly, and I'm definitely going to be doing more of that. So what do you, that's totally normal for all the letters to be made public, right?
Yeah, they're part of the court records. I did a live stream last night, and somebody said, well, where can we find them? And I said, well, if you want to pay the money, anything's public record. You just go to the courthouse and you pay the record retrieval fee. Somebody, I think, published them as well yesterday, but and they're available. They're not secret. They're public record, but it's super common. Somebody in a comment yesterday said, "Well, surely there's no way they would have known this was public." Yeah, absolutely, they know these letters were going to be public. They have a team of lawyers, especially those two, have a team of lawyers advising them. Hey, this is a bad idea, but you know what? It's their right to publish that, to submit those letters to the court if they choose to do so. And I can tell a client till I'm blue in the face, this is a terrible idea, but they still have the right to make terrible decisions.
Yeah. By the way, I'll send you that whole filing if you don't already have it, if you want to do something with it. Because it's not just the letters, it's the whole defense position statement. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it for sure.
Okay, Casey Cat says, question, are they suing Danny Masterson in civil case or also suing Scientology for their part in the cover-up? So their suit, there's a lawsuit against David Miscavige and Scientology and Danny Masterson for the harassment the Jane Does have been subjected to since coming forward. It's not a civil suit about the attacks themselves. And that now that sentencing is completed, the civil case will resume. Okay, Godless Scummer. Hi, Aaron. With the Masterson sentence and the news from the UK regarding the Charities Commission, just how bad has this week been for Scientology? Yeah, this is up there. Is really bad week for Scientology. I mean, but remember, guys, it was I think it was the 70s. 11 or 12 senior Scientology officials were sent to prison. I mean, could you imagine if that happened today? Like if that happened today, that would probably bring down the whole organization. So somehow back then it didn't. But I mean, just imagine like if Miscavige and 10 of his cronies went to prison. Like, I mean, Mary Sue Hubbard himself, L. Ron Hubbard's wife, was sent to prison. And this is when L. Ron Hubbard was already off into seclusion. So Mary Sue Hubbard was the biggest dog around at that time, and she went to prison. So that was arguably that week in the 70s was worse than this week, but this one is up there. Molly Sargent, finally caught you live. Put this towards a 5G hotspot for Zach. By the way, Zach, I should ask you, are you hardwired into whatever your connection is, or are you on Wi-Fi?
I'm a mix of both. I've actually got the bandwidth split between a hardwire connection and a separate Wi-Fi connection, but I think I'm on the. I should have been on the 5 gigahertz band instead of the 2.4.
I got it. It does seem that the longer we stay on, the longer our lag gets. So if you do need to do a restart again, just let me know. But I think we're fine for now. Sure. Okay. It says, I'm a Landmark Forum survivor and huge fan. Yes. You know what? I'd actually really like to talk to Molly Sargent. If you ever want to come on and talk with me on the channel about Landmark, I'd actually really like to do that. And if you'd like to, message me at growingupinscientology@gmail.com. Nancy Stitchin. Question, will the fair game understanding that will come out in a civil trial help other cases being told to go to arbitration? How can this quote unquote church require arbitration when they practice fair game? What do you think about this?
So what comes out in a civil trial in California at the trial level has absolutely no bearing on anywhere else in the country. There's no precedential value, meaning no other court is bound to it. It takes an appellate court to bind something. It is what we call persuasive authority. Hey, the same issue came up before, this judge in this other jurisdiction. This is what they did, and it's certainly favorable to our position. I get this question, and I think ultimately this is more about arbitration than it is about fair game, at least the way I interpret it. That's the way I'm interpreting it anyway. Arbitration is simply a contract. People get lost in this all the time. Arbitration is simply a contract. That's all it is. That's all it will ever be. And so I get questions all the time. Well, the arbitration has to be impartial. No, it doesn't. If by virtue of signing a contract, you agree to have every Scientologist in America be on your arbitration panel, that's what you agree to. And if you don't like the terms of the arbitration, don't sign the contract. It is a private. It is an agreement between parties to settle something out of court privately. Most courts, unless it is just by undue force or pressure. It doesn't even have to be equitable or fair as long as you didn't have essentially a gun to your head being threatened, right? You can't walk out of the room if you don't sign this, which I know there are some allegations that the church does things like that. But absent something like that, the courts are not in the position to say, well, this arbitration provision or this arbitration rule is unduly beneficial or it's unfair to one party. The courts don't care. You sign the contract. If you don't like it, don't sign it.
Yeah. As of right now, the only position the courts have taken with respect to these arbitration agreements and meaning the only position they've taken where these agreements can be invalidated is if the issue if the issue that is at issue is things that occurred after the person left Scientology. So far, the courts have ruled that the arbitration agreements do not cover anything that occurs after someone left Scientology. And if you can prove that the things were signed under duress, which so far nobody's been able to prove. The hearing that I was present for. Go ahead.
Well, no. So the only thing I was going to say is the only other weapon that a Jane Doe or a trafficking victim or a plaintiff litigant in a case might have would be, while we agree the arbitration, we have to go to arbitration. So fine, you go to arbitration, and then you come back and say they did not follow their own arbitration policy, whether it exists or not. I was told the contract says arbitration, the arbitration policy says there's supposed to be X number of people, and this and that and the other. That didn't happen. And if the church doesn't go through its arbitration process properly, then it's certainly grounds for the court to say, okay, you have an arbitration process, but you're not following it, so I'm not going to enforce the provision because you are clearly not prepared to execute your own policy.
That makes sense. That does make sense. SB, thank you for that very generous super sticker. Emma Demastri, my first super chat. Thank you, Aaron. FYI, Owen Elliott Kugel, who wrote a letter for Danny, is the daughter of Mama Cass Elliott from the Mamas and the Papas. Okay, so that means Owen is related to Bijou and China. So that makes sense. Wow. Okay. Thank you for that. Russ Hampton says Danny will be in a level 3 or more unless he does the whole PC thing, and no one will know where he's going until he's classed. Okay. Yeah. I cannot wait to find out. And I think we will have insiders even letting us know. But you're telling me it will be public knowledge, though. Someone will be able to find out not just what level he's in, but where exactly he is.
Yeah, if I knew of somebody right now in the California DOC, I could look them up and it would say where they're incarcerated. It won't say what block they're on, but it'll tell you what facility they're in.
Got it. Carrie Ann Sutherland, San Quentin is intake center. Okay. Lilith.
Right, that makes sense.
Coming back from a conference in religious studies in Lithuania, I went to the Scientology studies sessions to represent SPTV. Nice. Amazing, Lilith. I'd love to hear about that. Send me some info about what happened there. Growing up in Scientology at gmail.com. Xenu Princess Warrior, Ashton and Mila are being crucified in the press and Twitter for their letters supporting Danny. I saw that. I did. Aaron, you need to start an ex-Scientology comedy show. It's probably a coping mechanism through the years of Scientology abuse, but your wit and humor are powerful. I'm in LA. I will help. Yes. I do love me some comedy, but I'm too lazy to organize a comedy show. Jamie F1005. I only hope those poor girls understand how courageous they are, not just to other Scientologists, but to everyone. I think that they know. They do. And they've been getting a lot of love and support. And it's about time. It is about damn time. Sandy D, news sources are claiming that Ashton and Mila's letters were leaked to the press. Thoughts? That's totally false. I have the entire filing. Nothing was leaked. So the Danny's attorneys have to submit their and you know what? If I could pull it up here, I might even get the language right. I'm actually going to pull it up. Downloads. I'm not going to share it on screen. I'm just going to pull it up. It is called let me go to page 1. It is called Defendant's Memorandum of Points and Authorities in Support of Position at Sentencing. So it's their sentencing position motion. And attached to that motion, and the judge even announced this to the courtroom. She said, I've received your motion and all of the letters that you have attached as attachments to the motion, and it was all admitted into the file. Those are not protected. They're not under seal. They were available to the press. The attorneys were allowed to make it available to whomever they chose. So, not leaked. Not leaked by any normal definition of the word leaked. Okay, Electric Rocker 84. Will Scientology try and get someone into prison with Danny Masterson to keep an eye on him and make sure he doesn't say anything about them? No. Absolutely not. I mean, you can't just get someone into prison. What would this mean to you, Zach? There's that lag. Zach, you need to do a restart. It's been like 25 seconds now. All right, you're gonna hear this eventually. I'm gonna back you out, and you need to do a restart and then come back in. It's even funnier for all of you who know how anxious dead air makes me. Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, Scientology does not give a damn about Danny Masterson at this point. There's nothing they can do. The question will be, will Scientology declare Danny Masterson a suppressive person? Or am I, for the remainder of time, going to be able to say convicted serial rapist and Scientologist in good standing, Danny Masterson? I am going to keep calling him that until Scientology actually declares Danny Masterson a suppressive person. And then when they declare him a suppressive person, his family will either have to choose Danny or Scientology. And that's where shit really starts to get real, you know? So, yeah, thank you. Hanan Budana. Yeah, I'm saying that right. Oh, no, Buhadana. Hanan Buhadana. I don't even know what currency that is. I'm going to look that up. That's amazing. Thank you for the super chat. Lorraine, CDCR, so that's California Department of Corrections and something, already shows his facility that he's in LWAP. Well, that he's LWAP. Life with option of parole? Normally, I would think LWAP meant life without parole, but does that mean life with option of parole? I guess we'll find out. Cat ACDC fan, I see Zach is back in the studio. Let me bring him back in. Hey.
Let's see if that's any better.
I hope some tech expert watching can email you to explain, because it's interesting. The longer we're on the air, the longer the lag gets.
Yeah.
I've never experienced that before. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, it's the first time for me too.
Okay. Cat ACDC fan. From what I understand, Ted Bundy was a great guy. I don't remember anybody writing letters in support of him. Yeah. Could you imagine if people were like, look, crime notwithstanding, the guy did volunteer at the puppy, the pound. He took good care of the dogs, but oh my God, someone in the comments section of my video yesterday was like, Mrs. Lincoln, aside from that, how was the play? Referencing Abraham Lincoln's wife.
Yeah.
Mrs. Lincoln, aside from what occurred, how did you enjoy the play? Yeah. All right. Hanan Buhadana. Does the fact that Danny Masterson showed no remorse and didn't apologize or say anything in the sentencing hearing hurt his chances of parole later on? I don't know. What do you think, Zach?
No, Aaron, I think you hit it on the head in a prior video. If he stands up and apologizes and, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have done what I did, it's going to destroy any chance at appeal, because that's on the record. That would be part of the record that goes to the appellate court. If at some point as he's preparing for parole, he says, listen, I made a mistake, I should not have done that, and the reason I had to not say anything at the sentencing was because I was trying to preserve the record for appeal. The parole folks are going to understand that. But at this point, the parole consideration is so far away. I'll be a grandparent and possibly a great grandparent before he's even remotely eligible. So,
right, makes sense. I like this question. What about the Nation of Islam protecting Danny in prison? It was brought up a while back, but I haven't heard about it recently. I got to be honest, it's been a while since you or I chatted about this, or it was probably actually Tommy Scoville that I chatted about this with. I truly don't remember what we were speculating about. And people are probably wondering, why is this even coming up? Because Scientology has a partnership with the Nation of Islam. Scientology has a partnership with Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam. If you go to the Church of Scientology in Washington, D.C., most of the staff members in that organization are members of the Nation of Islam. NOI members are doing Scientology OT levels. They're going clear. They're doing the OT levels. It's very hard to really explain how such a thing is possible. The Nation of Islam is a very racist organization. They don't like whites. They don't like Jews. There's not very many things more whiter or more Jewish than Scientology. Scientology has a lot of Jewish people in it and is over 98% white. By the way, that's culturally Jewish, not practicing Jewish, because in Scientology, you can't practice anything else.
Yeah,
like
ethnic
Jewish.
Yeah,
there are so many actual Israelis in Scientology. One of the only successful Scientology groups outside of the Church of Scientology is in Israel. It's the, I never say it right, Hafia mission. An entire Scientology mission defected from Scientology and is still successfully operating in Israel. So, you know what? I'm going to do a chat with Tommy later this evening or tomorrow, and we're going to revisit this issue. You and I never spoke about Scientology and the NOI in prison, did we?
No, I think I'm familiar with the concept, but Tommy is going to be the expert on that, not me.
Yeah, okay. W.V. Tara, do you think Danny will be a successful jailhouse sommelier? I'm so glad you mentioned this, because Danny started his own wine farm, or what do you call it? A vineyard. And I even had a picture of his wine. It's an orange, it's an orange colored wine. I even had the name of it somewhere. I've got to pull it up. But now he can be a prison sommelier, making the finest toilet wine in California. And maybe he can, earn a little money on the side.
Exactly.
Someone needs to, even if as a joke, bottle some Danny Masterson's toilet wine, and I will sell that shit. or DJ Donkey Punch's toilet wine. The #1 sommelier in the yard. DJ Donkey Punch, the #1 sommelier. All right, exactly. Last one here. NatCat180. Hi, Aaron. Much love to you and all SPTV creators. Idea: can we post a wall of shame to list all the people, including celebrities, who sent in letters supporting Danny Masterson? Yes, I've made a list, and I'll figure out what to do with it. I read that list out in my video I did earlier today, but that's just a fleeting mention in a video on the internet. We'll figure out something to do with it. Yeah. All right. So that's it for now. Do you have anyone who wants to say hi? Is someone right there wanting?
No,
she's just an animal.
It's a human. She's just observing right now. She's fine.
Okay, good. All right, guys. I think that's all we have. Anything else that you wanted to mention? Or are we good?
I think we're ready to go.
Okay, let me see. I think we still have Zach's. Let me get this out of the way. Guys, if you're not yet subscribed to my lawyer friend Zach, check him out on YouTube at Your Lawyer Friend Zach. Thank you to everyone for hanging out with us this evening. Thank you, as always, to everyone who watches until the very end. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right here. Bye.